Hello, and welcome back to this series of videos where we are talking about setting up Chocolatey within an organization. Now, in the last video, we looked at getting Jenkins installed, ready for using Jenkins, which is a CI/CD platform, as a mechanism for automating the process of package internalization of our packages. So let's jump in from where we left off. We left it with the installation was pretty much complete, and it was installing some of the suggested plugins that Jenkins wants to use. Now, one thing I did note is that as I was going through this, I did get some failures in installing those plugins. I did try the retry. They still seem to fail. I don't necessarily know what that is referring to, but we might find that out as we're going through this video. So let's carry on with the setup of this machine. So I'm going to create an admin user with a default password that I will remember, and then we'll just call this administrator, and email address is going to be let's see, which one will we use? Let's just use this one in case we do actually need it. But actually, it's saying continue as admin, so let's do that. Let's just continue as admin rather than setting up a user. Let's continue as our admin user. Instance configuration is telling us that this is how we get access to it, and we are going to say save and finish. It's asking us the proposed default value shown not saved. Best practice is to set this value to the URL that user is expected to use. Okay, so I'm going to say save and finish then. So Jenkins is ready, and we can say start using Jenkins. Now, I'm currently still on my Jenkins machine. Now, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to access Jenkins from what is my workstation machine. So this is my workstation machine. This is where I'm going to do all of my work. So I want to be able to access Jenkins from this machine. So in theory, if I walk up to here and go http Jenkins colon 8080, that is where I want to be able to access it. And I was expecting to have to open up a firewall port to get that to work. But it seems like that part's already been taken care of for us. So that might have been part of the installation of the Jenkins package. I know when we set up our Nexus repository, we had to open up a firewall port to be able to access it, but it looks like we are able to do this here. So welcome to Jenkins, it's saying. So I'm assuming that one of these is admin. I'm assuming that this is one of those. One of these is going to be the username, and one of them is a password. So let's just sign in. Okay, so I've got access to the Jenkins box from this machine, so that's good. That's what I was hoping for, and this is where I want to do the majority of my work. So if we go back to the documentation over here, which is this one, I'm going to minimize this tab because we're finished with that. If we read through this documentation, let's go back to the docs. Sorry, not sure what happened there. Let's go learn docs, and in our how-to section there is a how to automate package internalizer, which is this one. So if we read through this documentation, the documentation as it stands is garnered at using Chocolatey.server, which is it's similar. Well, I'm not going to say that. Chocolatey.server is an alternative to using something like Nexus. The documentation aims at using Chocolatey.server. We're not using Chocolatey.server, so we can skip some of this. So this section here, which is all about setting up Chocolatey server, we can skip all of this because we're not doing this. And the end result is that we have two repositories, a test repository and a production repository. Now our setup is slightly different because our URLs are a little bit different, but we do have a test repository and we do have a production repository. And then it talks us about installing Jenkins, opening it up on port 8080, and stepping through these pages which we've just done. Now, what we're going to do is the next part, which is to set up some jobs to execute some PowerShell code. So in order to do that, it looks like we're going to need to have the PowerShell plugin for Jenkins. So we're going to need to go to Manage Jenkins. And I may just open this on a separate tab so I can refer to it without jumping backwards and forwards. So we're going to click on Manage Jenkins, and then we're going to click on Manage Plugins. Some plugins could not be loaded due to unsatisfied dependencies. So these are probably related to the failed installations that I saw. So we'll come back to that. Because, like I say, we're using a very small subset of Jenkins. So those plugins that maybe, let's just have a look to see what they are. Pipeline, Groovy, we're not using Groovy. Branch API plugin, Pipeline, Groovy. I think we're going to be okay. But ultimately, we would want to fix those. But for what we're going to be using, I think we're okay. So we're going to say Manage Plugins, and we are going to click on the Available tab. And then in here, we are going to filter down to PowerShell. So do I need to hit enter there? I may need to hit enter there. No. Oh, I saw it. So let's click on this one. That's taking me out to do that. That's not what we want to do. So we want to tick this box, and we want to download. What do we want to do? We want to install without a restart. I'm just reading the docs, and it tells me that's what I want to do. So these are the ones that are currently being installed. So I did notice that there were some failed installations. PowerShell was successful, so that's the main one that we're interested in just now. Now, what we want to go do next is the way that the Jenkins jobs are going to execute is they're going to execute some PowerShell that is on the file system. So it wants us to create a folder for those to hold those scripts. So the recommended folder is one called scripts. So the first one is the get updated package.ps1. So I'm going to, in fact, I can click the copy button, and I'm going to create a new file in here, and that's going to be called, so all I've done is copy the code from that PowerShell window there, and I'm going to go into my C scripts folder, and I'm going to call that as get updated package.ps1. So we'll go through these scripts and what they're doing in a little bit. Just now we'll just get everything set up, and then we'll look through and see what they do. Because again, as per previous warnings, this is scripts that you're getting from the internet. You're going to want to make sure that you're happy with them before you do anything with them. But let's get them all saved down. And we're going to say file save as scripts update prod repo from test.ps1. And then there's one more script, which is convert to Choco object. So let's do file new, paste, file, save as, save that as a PS1 file as well, and convert to Choco object .ps1. Convert, spelled that right. Convert to Choco object.ps1. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what these scripts are doing. So this one is get updated package. So it takes some input parameters, which are the local repository, the API key, and the remote repository. And then it's going to dot source the convert to Choco object. So what it's doing is it's getting a list of local packages. So from the local repository, so our local repository is I forget how it's configured, but we'll come to that. So that's either going to be our test repository or our production repository. It's then going, so it's going to list out those, and then it's going to convert them to Choco object. So what is convert to Choco object? So convert to Choco object is literally taking the output of the Choco list command. So let's just actually do that. So if we were to do CLS and do Choco list local only and then -r, or the limit output, then it's going to list out the packages that we have installed on this machine. Okay, so with that in mind, or rather, if we take that and pass that into the convert to Choco object, it's going to give us a PowerShell object back that has the name and the version number of the packages that we have. So it's basically just it's essentially deserializing that information into an object in PowerShell that we can make use of. So that's really all this convert to Choco object is doing. So it's just a helper method, really. So this is doing a Choco list of that source, and then it's going to loop through those local packages, and it's getting remote package information. So it's going to look at another repository, and it's going to do the same Choco list on that remote repository. And then it's do a comparison between the version numbers of the local one and the remote one. And it's going to say package has a remote version of which is greater than that. And if it finds one that's got a greater version, we can download and internalize it. So here, this is the same command that we've run before, but it's doing it in an automated way by checking the local versions against the upstream versions. And it's going to automatically internalize that. And then it's going to push it into the local repository. Now that's also going to take down any dependencies, obviously. So it's going to loop through all the packages that were downloaded as part of that internalization process, and it's going to put it into our internal repository. So based on the configuration, that's either going to go to the test repository or it's going to go to the production repository. So that's what's happening there. The other one is update prod repo from test. So this is all about keeping our production repository in sync with what's in our test repository. So again, it takes some input parameters, it dot sources that convert to Choco object. It's going to do a similar thing with regard to listing out the packages that are available, and it's going to convert them into those objects. And then it's some sanity checking here to make sure that it actually got something in it. And it's then going to find out if there's any differences between what's in the test repository and what's in the production repository. And if there are, it's going to download them from the test repository, and it's going to push them up into the production repository. Now, what we've got here on lines 44 through 42 is this set of scripts is really a basis for what you can do. Okay, so what the intention here is that you would have some sort of predefined test. So you might want to install that package somewhere. You might want to spin up a VM using something like Vagrant or another mechanism for orchestrating a virtual environment. You might want to install that package, make sure that it installs correctly, make some assertions based on expectations around the package, etc. So we don't know what your organization needs in that sort of scenario, but the intention here is that you can augment this script with whatever tests that you want to do. So in the default scripts, it's literally just going to take all the packages that are in the test repository, and if they don't exist on the production repository, it's going to push them to the production repository. So that's not something you may not want to do that without putting some tests in here, but this code comment here is where you would do that work. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a disclaimer in terms of what these scripts are doing. And then we've already seen the convert to Choco object and what it's doing. So what we need to do now is we need to create the Jenkins jobs to run those scripts based on the configuration that we give it. So we are going to create 3 jobs within Jenkins. So this part is very much a copy and paste and make things work. So I'm going to bring this over onto my screen that you can't see in the video, and I'm going to be able to copy and paste from here a little bit easier. But it's literally a case of going through this section, following the instructions, creating the jobs, and copying in the relevant sections. So with that in mind, let's go to the home page. and we are going to start by each job is detailed below. Use the detail to create a new job. From the home page, click new item. So we're going to click new item, enter the item name. So the item name in this case for the first one is going to be update test repository from Chocolatey Community Repository. It's going to be of type pipeline. So we've clicked on that and we're going to click OK. Then it's going to ask us for a description. So we can copy and paste the description from here. Automatically update any out-of-date packages in the test repository from the community repository. I'm going to copy this and we're going to click on ticked options. This project is parameterized, so we're going to click on this and do not allow concurrent build. So you can't have this build running at the same time as another instance of it. So we're going to add a string parameter, and that is going to have the name of p local chocolatey, and then it wants the URL of the test repository. So in our case, we are running Nexus on port 8081. So if we go over to our Nexus server, just so that we make sure that we get the right URLs. Oh, I didn't put the password in properly. Didn't think I did. But again, there we go. So if we go over here and look at our repositories, and the test repository has a URL of this. I'm going to go ahead and grab this. And I'm going to put that as the default value. And the description here is going to be the internal test repository. Parameter is, and then trim the string. So we're going to click trim the string. And then I'm going to add another parameter here that is a string parameter. And this is going to be this is our remote repository. So in this case, we are synchronizing with what is coming from the community repository. So we're putting in the chocolatey.org/API/v2. And then the description for this one is remote repository containing updated package versions. And then we're going to say trim the string. And then we're going to add in another parameter here, which is a password parameter. And this is going to be our local repo API key. And then what we need there is the API key of the user that has access to it. So I'm just going to use, I'm going to log in and authenticate, and I'll be able to grab this. This is the API key of my user. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste that into there. And then the description for this one is copy. Okay, so that's the 3 parameters there. And then in the pipeline tab here, we're going to want to put some script. So I'm going to copy the script from here. I'm going to paste that in. So what we're doing here is we are setting the location to be our system drive in that scripts folder. So that C scripts folder that we created. We're going to navigate into that. We are then going to execute the get updated package PS1 file that we spoke about earlier. And then we're going to pass in the test repository. We're going to pass in the API key and then the community repository URL. So this job is the one that's going to synchronize between what's in the test repository and what's in the community repository. And if there are newer versions, it's going to pull that down for us. So I'm going to go ahead and click save here. And that should give us a job. So if we go back up to the home page, we've now got a job, and that job will do all that things that we just spoke about. So that's the setup of the first. That's the setup of the first job. Now you could also set up a trigger for this. So the triggers are something that. So a trigger would be if you want to set it up to run on a default schedule. We are just going to set up we're just going to manually trigger it. That you could absolutely set it up so that this would be set up in a automated way. That's definitely something you could do. So the build triggers here would be like I say, you could trigger it remotely from a script. You could do it periodically, but we're just going to do it on a manual trigger at the minute. Okay. one thing I noticed that I haven't done is I haven't set up enable auto refresh. Enable auto refresh is literally it will automate the updating of the page and keep it up to date. So let's do this again. I'm going to go back to here and we'll do new item, and we're going to walk through that process again for the second job. So the second job is all about internalize packages, internalize package from the community repository. Right, okay, yes. So the previous job was called update test repository from the community repository. So it's all about looking at what's in the test repository already, and then checking to see if there's newer versions already in there. But let's say we wanted to add a new package into the mix. So that's what this one's for. The internalized package from the community repository will take an argument, a list of packages that we want to add in. Okay, so we click on pipeline again and we click OK, and that will allow us to set this up. And then there's a description that we need to add in here. So the description is add new packages for internalizing from the community repository. We're going to say that this is a parameterized build again, and to not allow concurrent builds. And there's a few parameters we need to pass in. So I'm going to add in another string parameter, and that is going to be called p package list. Default value, we'll leave that as blank because we don't know what that wants to be. And then list of Chocolatey packages to be internalized, which are semicolon separated. And I'm going to say trim the string again. And I'm going to add in another string parameter, which is going to be called the destination URL. And then this wants to be, again, our test repository. So let's go back to here to make sure that we get it right. So the test repository has a URL of this guy. So let's put that in as the default value. So obviously these are default values, but if when you're executing one of these jobs, you can choose to change them if you want. So this is going to be a description of internal package repository URL, and then trim the string again. And the final one is going to be a password parameter again, because we are going to need to pass in the API key of that user. So because I've had to do that twice now, I'll open up a new tab and then we'll go to this section so that we don't have to do it twice. I'm going to try typing that password one more time. I'm going to copy that and we'll put that into here. And then there's a description for this one as well. So copy and paste. And then for the pipeline, we're going to need some PowerShell code again. So there's another snippet of PowerShell that we need to grab. So I'm going to grab this and we'll have a quick read through it. So what's this one doing? Is again, this is us downloading a package from the internet, from the community repository. So it's setting up a temp folder, and then it's creating that temp folder. It's then looking through the package list and splitting it based on the semicolon, and then for each of those, it's running that Choco download command that we've spoken about before. Assuming that didn't error, it's then going to loop through any of the nutkegs that were created, because remember, when you internalize a package, it may well bring down some dependencies as well. So it's then going to loop through and it's going to push those into our remote repository. Okay, and then we can say save the job. So we've now got two jobs in Jenkins. One is the mirroring, if you like, of what's in the test repository to the production repository, and we've now got the capability to download one or a list of packages from the community repository to add into our internal repository. And the last job that we need is going to be a new item, and the new item is going to be called copy update production repository, and it's going to be a pipeline. I'm going to click OK, and the description of this is determine new packages on the test repository, test and submit them to the production repository. Okay, so this is going to be a parameterized build again, and we're going to say do not allow concurrent builds. So we're going to add in a string parameter. That string parameter is going to be called this. So this wants to be our production repository this time. This was our test one. So I'm going to copy this one, I'll change it. So our test repository becomes our prod. And then the description of this is the URL to the production repository. And I'm going to trim it. I'm going to add in another, or I'm going to add in a password parameter. And that password parameter is going to be called this. And then that's going to be our API key that has closed on us. But if I copy that and paste that into here, and then this is copy API key for the production repository, and then one more string parameter, which is our test repository URL. So that wants to be this one, and then that's going to be there, and then I'm going to say trim the string again. Now this one's slightly different because this one is going to be triggered based on something else happening. So I'm going to say build after projects are built, and the projects to watch are, I think I could just type in here, yep, internalize packages from the community repository and the update. So update test repository. And we're going to say trigger only if build is stable. So that's that first option. And then project opens, that one there. And then we also need our pipeline again. So I've got some more PowerShell code here. I paste this in. Again, we're moving to that scripts folder. We are calling the update prod repo from test, and we're passing in all that information. And we're going to hit save. So to reiterate, we've got that final job, which was called this middle one here, this update production repository. This one will get called if we manually trigger an option to, let me recap. So we've got the option to manually trigger a build if there's a new package that we want to download and internalize. Once that's downloaded and internalized, it will then call the update production repository, which will then push that into our production repository. Okay, and it's this job that you could add in some testing logic to say, I'm taking something from the test repository, test it before I go into my production repository. Now, that's the one thing that we don't do for you within the scripts. So if that's something that you need, definitely take the steps to add that logic in. And the other thing that we can do is we can update the test repository from the community repository. So let's have a look at see what we can do with that. So let's try running a couple of these. Okay, so if we go and browse our repositories just now, if we browse our test repository, then we will see that there are lots of packages in here. But since I set this up, there may well be new versions of these packages. So what our script's going to do is it's going to attempt to find any packages on the test repository that have been updated in the community repository, and if there are, it's going to download and internalize them. So we'll run that one to start with to see if there's anything's out of date, and we'll look at the log to see what happens. So the one that we want to do is this one. So I'm going to click on this one, and then we have the option of build with parameters. So I'm going to click the build with parameters button, and it's got all the defaults in it, so you shouldn't have to change these unless something's changed in your environment. But I'm just going to go ahead and click build. So it's going to run off and it's going to attempt to do that work. So you'll see down here in the bottom left that it's started build job number 1. And if we click on this, we can see the console output. So if we click on this and say console output, we can actually see the output to see what's happening. Okay, so that's not good. That's broken. C scripts. Why did that not work? Cannot find path C scripts. C scripts. Have I? That's not a good start. Running Jenkins, C program, update test repository. Set location, cannot find C scripts. Copy. CD into C scripts. Okay. I'm going to attempt to run that build again, because that should have worked. Let's try that again. So click build again, and let's look at build number 2 here this time, and let's hope that that does something different. Nope. Set location, cannot find C scripts because it does not exist. C scripts. Would it be a permissions issue, would it? Okay, so I'm slightly conscious that this video is run a little bit long, but I did say that I wasn't going to stop a video and fake things and make things work. So I'm going to stop this video so that it doesn't run too long, and we're going to come back in another video, an immediate follow-up video, and we will figure out why this isn't working. Okay. So if there are any comments on this question and the setup and the configuration of this and why we're doing it, feel free to reach out in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter and I'll answer any questions that you might have. But for now, I'm going to stop this video and basically start another one straight away to figure out what's going on here. So talk to you in a little bit.